Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of GameSack. And this time we're going to talk about 8 and 16-bit era controllers. And as you can see here, we've got a lot of them to discuss. What? There are no controllers on this table, Joe. Yeah, there are. Where? Right here. How in the hell did you do that? I did it with magic, my friend. Magic. I like magic. Magic is good. And as I was saying, we have a lot of controllers here to talk about, so we're not going to go beyond the 16-bit era in this episode. We're just going to do with the 8 and 16-bit stuff that people know and love in this episode, so let's get to it. Alright, first up is the pad from Nintendo for the 8-bit system. This pad is very comfortable, nice rectangular shape, which actually is the granddaddy for all later 8-bit pads. Really nice directional pad, A, B button, start, select, all your basic functions which were needed for an 8-bit game.
And this is Sega's first pad for the Master System. It doesn't offer a start and select button, but the overall shape and layout is similar to the NES pad. At the time I got it, I thought it was awesome, and I thought it was cool that you could do diagonals, because on the NES pad, obviously you couldn't do diagonals because it only had a plus, so there was no way in the world that it would let you do diagonals, but you know, I was an idiot at the time. But it's got buttons 1 and 2, and button 1 doubles as a start button because that button is very, very powerful, and the cord comes out of the side, and it really kind of makes it annoying to play, but they did change it so the cord comes out of the top on later models.
Okay, here is the NES Max pad for the 8-bit Nintendo system. This pad, as you can see, has the first designed with the wings. This might be where Sony got its idea from for later on consoles. This pad it works okay. It's got this kind of crazy directional pad which slides along, and you have to actually go to the far extremes to get it to work well. It also has the normal A and B button, but it has turbo buttons down here which you hold in for the turbo. It doesn't have any sort of switches like that. They're actually just sort of separate buttons for themselves. So it's kind of small, but it's actually very comfortable to hold. The only problem I wish it didn't have is this crazy directional pad.
Oh, come on, look at this stupid NES, Maxi pad? Just look at this thing. Look at it, it's stupid. And now look at the turbo button. So if I don't want my jump on turbo, but I want my shoot on turbo, I'm just do. Oh, I gotta press all the way down here. Do. It's just ridiculous. I would snap this in half if this wasn't yours, Dave. I really would. Sega released a sports pad for the Master System, which was a trackball over on the right and the buttons over on the left. You can switch between control and sports, and there are games that required the Sega sports pad. It also kind of works for paddle control games. It even has a built-in rapid fire and has a crazy trackball. It's meant for sports games, but I think it's best used for games like Marble Madness. And yes, the Sega Sports Pad will work with both the Master System and the 16-bit Sega Genesis version of Marble Madness.
Here we have the NES Advantage. This is the arcade-style controller for the Nintendo Entertainment System. This is actually quite a good pad. It's got a nice solid metal base, so it adds a nice weight to it. A good, nice, solid joystick. Not too big like those crazy Sega pads where you're like some sort of gargantuan hand or something. Just look at the comparison between these two balls here. Whose ball would you rather have in your hand? Sega's huge balls or Nintendo's nice, petite, perfect ball? You got two turbos on here. You can control the levels with it. Start, slow, select, all the normal stuff on here. The only weird thing that I find is this pad actually takes up 2 controller ports. Why? I have absolutely no idea, but it does. Maybe somebody can answer this for me and tell me why it does it. This pad is okay. The only game I actually use it for is Gunsmoke, where it's actually kind of required to shoot left, right, and center at all times during that game.
And this is a 3-button pad for the Sega Genesis. I thought it was fantastic at the time. I mean, I was just overwhelmed by the amount of buttons. It had more than 2. It had 3 plus a start button, and it just totally blew my mind. And the pad was a lot better, but you know, overall it didn't age very well. It's very, very large to hold these days, and it just makes me feel like I'm holding one of those original Xbox pads where I need a frickin' tripod for the thing.
Okay, this is another Nintendo Entertainment System 8-bit pad. This was released with the redesign of the Nintendo system, affectionately known as the dog bone controller. It's actually quite comfortable to hold, and if you held one, you'd actually be feeling like you're holding your girlfriend's behind. But it's quite comfortable, just basically the same control function as the original pad, but just a new, nice shape.
And here we have the Sega Genesis Arcade Power Stick. It features a nice platform to rest your hand on while you use the joystick. It features A, B, and C buttons which light up just in case you're not sure if you're actually pressing the button. It lets you know. It has Mega Fire for each button, which is way better than Auto Fire or Turbo Fire or Rapid Fire. It has a slider to control the rate of the Mega Fire, and that's just amazing. And it even has a start button to pause your game or start it. This stick works great for games like Ghostbusters, which don't feature diagonals, and you won't worry about that when you're using the Sega Genesis Arcade Power Stick. And here we have the 6-button version of the Arcade Power Stick. It's pretty much exactly the same, except it has 6 buttons. It's not quite as heavy, not quite as sturdy as the 3-button controller, but if you need 6 buttons, it'll do.
And this here is the Super Nintendo pad for the, obviously, Super Nintendo system. The pad was released with the system, and it's basically an upgrade to the 8-bit pad, and adds 4 more buttons. So you got 4 buttons on the face, 2 on the shoulders. Very comfortable D-pad, very comfortable design. It works really well with all games, even fighting games. At first you're kind of like, what the hell am I supposed to do with my fingers up here? But you actually do get the hang of it, and it is very comfortable.
And here we have the Sega Genesis 6-button controller, which they released with the advent of Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter 2. It has 6 buttons on the face of the pad. It's so comfortable, you could just orgasm. It has a start button right in the middle, and it has a freaking mode button on the right shoulder. It's just amazing for when you need to press mode. There it is. Anyway, this is probably one of the best controllers ever made, ever. There's only one controller better, and we're not talking about it in this episode, but this controller is probably one of the best that has ever been made, in my opinion.
Here we have the Super Advantage pad, actually made by ASCIIware, not Nintendo themselves, but it was made by ASCIIware. This thing, as you can see, was modeled directly after the Super Nintendo, which is quite awesome in itself, as it is a beautiful design system. This is a standard arcade stick. It's got a nice heavy weighted bottom, so it's not going to flop around and slide off your lap like one of those crazy Sega pads. It's got slow motion feature, which you can control the strength of the slow motion. It's got your standard turbo buttons, and you can control the strength of the turbo buttons. It also has some crazy function for auto, which I think is, for lazy Sega guys, that somehow got transferred to this pad, where you don't have to push a button at all, I guess. I don't know. But anyways, it's a nice solid pad. It's got a great feeling joystick, and it doesn't have one of those crazy armrests like Sega's where you rest your hand. Who rests their hand while playing a game? That's just plain lazy. But you gotta watch out for these power sticks here. This power button and the reset button. If you touch those, your game's over, man.
No! I get the feeling that you just might like Nintendo controllers better than Sega controllers. Am I reading you right here?
Well, am I that obvious?
Really? Yes, you are.
Because you're right, I do like Nintendo controllers.
You need to stop because Sega controllers are better. In fact, let's get on with this, okay? Here we have the controller for the TurboGrafx 16 Entertainment Super System. The same controller is also used with the Turbo Duo. It has a great D-pad, though it is a little stiff. Select and run, because obviously start isn't good enough. It has 2 and 1 buttons. It has rapid fire for each button. One thing that is bad about this controller is the length of the cord. It's way too short. It simply will not do. And here is the turbo stick, also for the TurboGrafx 16 Turbo Duo. It's just your basic joystick, 2 buttons. They're labeled backwards like all TurboGrafx stuff is, 2 and then 1 instead of 1 and then 2. Just like Nintendo stuff is B and A instead of A and B. It has turbo and slow motion, all that crap. I lost one of the caps for the turbo sliders, but it's small. I really don't know why I got this. I never use this. And this is the Avenue Pad 6, which we featured in episode 2. It's the same thing as the basic turbo pad, except it features 6 buttons. You can switch between 2 and 6 button mode. It has rapid fire for the first 2 buttons, and it has slow motion, and it's really good for Street Fighter 2 and other fighting games, things like that. But it's your basic turbo pad with 6 buttons.
Here we have the ASCIIware Fighter Pad for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. This pad was made in response to all the fighting game craze that was coming out towards the end of the system's life. As you can see, it's finally got 6 buttons on the face. and turbo buttons. It still even retains the shoulder buttons for people who enjoyed the original Super Nintendo pad like I did. But overall, it's kind of a crazy wide design. It feels way wider than a normal pad, and it's not quite as comfortable, but it is another option for you Super Nintendo fans.
And here's the default stick for the SNK Neo Geo. It's a 16-bit system, yes, it's not a 24-bit system, so shut up. It has a micro switch joystick, which is very responsive, really good. It has select and start buttons. It has what they call pad A, pad B, pad C, whatever. But what I don't like about this stick is how steep the angle is of the buttons here. You need to kind of turn your hand like that to get them on all 4 buttons, and it's just really kind of stupid. I wish it was like a less steep angle so you could just do back and forth like that instead of, you know, kind of going up a very steep set of stairs like that. But overall, regardless of that, it's still a pretty good stick. And here is a control pad that comes with a Neo Geo CD usually. It features a micro switch control pad, which you can hear it clicking around. It's fairly responsive, but it's not as quick to respond as, say, a regular joypad like Sega or Nintendo, just because it has so much travel distance in it. It has your start and select, but it has your diamond configuration, which is kind of odd for some games, but usually it works. And again, I think it's a little bit too steep. I think they should have been a little less generous with their steepness, but overall I prefer using it over the Neo Geo joystick.
Alright, well, that wraps up another episode of GameSack.
And an exciting episode it was.
It sure was. And if you have any suggestions, comments, questions, please feel free to drop us a line.
Yeah, we like reading the little things that you write. And we're also happy that you agree with us that the Sega Genesis 6-button controller for the Sega Genesis system is the best controller of the 8 and 16-bit era, bar none.
Well, I'm going to have to disagree, of course, because the Super Nintendo pad is by far the most comfortable, most ergonomic pad from the 8 and 16-bit era. I'm sure a lot of people agree with
No. See, the Sega Genesis 6-button pad has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, count them, 6 buttons, and it's freaking awesome.
Let me hold that one more time. I might change my mind. It was close. Nope, I didn't change my mind. This is still better.
I've got way more where that came from, my friend. Yes, I am. You can't ever be without one of these. These are always something you want to play with. But I guess we're going to have to agree to disagree on which controller is best, at least for this episode.
Yeah, let's agree to disagree. See you next time.
But this really is better.